Bradley Lowe was receiving $380 a month from the province. But under provincial regulations, someone who rents a place to live or owns a home and has a disability or chronic mental condition could get the enhanced rate of $950 per month. Could Bradley appeal his income assistance?
And he looked at me and I looked at him and he said, look, I do own my own accommodation. It's pretty modest, but I own it. And, he had stuff there, he had to make arrangements, he had ongoing shelter costs.
So he felt he fit the definition?
Yeah, he totally did.
Bradley Lowe became hooked on prescription opioids as a teenager, recovering from an injury. Through his 20s, he worked in construction and kitchens, and he was in and out of rehab, battled depression and anxiety, an addict who recently was drug-free. And his favorite title? Father.
Yeah, 4 years old, and he said, look, I've got to get myself together for my son. I've got to maintain on the straight and narrow for my son. I don't want to go into high-risk situations. Why? It's bad for him, but more importantly, to maintain his relationship with his son.
It'd be nice to give people at least some level of funding that's beyond a few $100s a month.
Michael Ganuik works with opioid addicts. He says his patients have a fighting chance at a better life living away from the turmoil and the temptation in the tents.
If you're unhoused, how could you ever focus on, improving your mental well-being or, getting treatment for an addiction? It's really the priority is housing. And so giving people who are unhoused the financial support to maybe help them get closer to housing is so important for them to meet their other health needs.
Last month, Bradley and his lawyer made their case for more money
it's literally developer propaganda.
For the Income Assistance Appeal Board.
We had come back from the hearing and he said to me, look, it's really fortunate that we met because of all the people in the encampment, I feel I'm both together enough and focused enough to pull this off.
That same day that Laura Walton learned of Bradley's passing, another tenter had overdosed in front of her at the library.
So our security guard was able to use Narcan to revive them, which was great. And then when I was talking to one of the other security guards about it, he was like, yeah, it's really sad, like what happened to Brad. So I hadn't heard about that at that point. So,
security guards.
When he told me that, it was so sad because
maybe you should have
someone
less security guards,
revived.
maybe more health
I
professionals.
don't know them, but you would hope someone like Brad would have been revived, and that I would have loved for someone to have been there to help him because he was someone who wanted to help other people. So it was really sad. Yeah.
And the cruelty of it all, Bradley Lowe was in line for a bed in a rooming house just 2 days later. In mid-January, a month after his passing, the board dismissed Bradley's appeal. So what is the best way to help those in tents? The province argues increasing income allowance rates right now is not the way to go. It says it has spent millions on shelters. Best for people living in tents to take immediate refuge there, according to the Minister of Community Services, Trevor Boudreau.
We've put the money forward to provide that support for people who are living in encampments. And so, it is a challenge. People are saying they don't want to go, and this is frustrating because we have a space that is available. We have capacity there right now.
Vince Calderhead says many who have mental health issues or drug addictions won't leave their tent home,
where are they going to go
such as they are, because the shelters have no sense of community and too many rules, including around drug use. He says it's hard to not let the futility of it all set in.
This is an ongoing struggle, and for people who are trying to get their human rights respected. Canada and Nova Scotia have agreed that everyone is entitled to an adequate standard of living.
How can anybody be homeless on fucking stolen land?
Look what we're tolerating, look what we're putting up with. I mean, people living in remarkably inadequate circumstances.
Tom, this is really hard. And for those people who are living in tents in Nova Scotia, hoping to get more income assistance, what happens for them now?
Well, Bradley Lowe's lawyer has applied for a judicial review of his case to try to get that failed appeal overturned. Now, if successful, the lawyer argues Bradley's income assistance should be paid retroactively to Bradley's estate, and eventually, the hope would be at least, to Bradley's son. And if the lawyer wins the case, he says it could be precedent-setting, at least in the province of Nova Scotia.
What's the reaction amongst some of the people who are living in these tents about this potential change in income assistance like this?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I know that in talking to people on the street here who are trying to help tenters navigate the system, there is some hope. There are certainly lots of people living rough who knew Bradley and are really rooting for him and his cause even after his death. So we'll have to see how it goes. They're waiting with much interest.
I know we're talking primarily about Nova Scotia, but can you pull back a little bit for us and let us know where Nova Scotia sits in comparison with the other provinces on this?
Yeah, it's really difficult to compare province to province because they all administer social assistance in their own way. In Ontario, a homeless person only gets money for shelter once a, quote, dwelling is retained. But in New Brunswick, the government there says there is no deduction to social assistance based on accommodation type. So there seems to be little uniformity, even as the number of tents in our cities seems to increase.
All right, Tom Murphy in Halifax, thank you.
And I know that for a fact because I've had it happen to me.
Coming up, artificial intelligence is already being used to fight the effects of climate change, but it also contributes to the problem. We'll break down why next.